Speaking of butchering and killing,
yeah.
Today we're going to talk about Iron Maiden.
Does anyone know who those guys are?
Probably not. They're kind
relatively
of small.
Relatively,
as far as bands that own their own Boeing airplane, they're not that well known.
Small pillars in the music industry.
So, I just asked Dan if he wanted to talk about the history of Maiden, and he said no. But I think that we should just real quickly go through it, if that's okay. Just
that's
fast.
That's
okay.
Perfectly fine.
So the late 70s, there's a guy named Steve Harris, mid to late 70s. The year, not his age. And he starts a band. Eventually it turns into Iron Maiden. Eventually he goes through about 40,000 different members. And their first lineup has Paul Di'Anno. Yeah,
that's
Paul Di'Anno as the singer. And mostly the rest of the band is in place. I think they had a different drummer for a couple of things.
Clive Burr.
Yeah, Clive Burr. And then they get rid of Paul Di'Anno. Bruce Dickinson joins. He has a more operatic type voice. The band sort of changes along with that. They go for a long time and put out a lot of cool records. Adrian Smith leaves. He's one of the guitar players at No Prayer for the Dying. Bruce Dickinson stays on for Fear of the Dark. Then in the X Factor, they bring in Blaze Bayley. And then they do the X Factor Virtual X. And then the old band reforms with
Virtual. Sorry to correct you about it's
Virtual 11.
Virtual 11. Yes, exactly. Virtual
and then X. The old lineup gets together and they do stuff for about the next 20 years. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. That's about it. That's the shorthand of it all.
And I mean, that's the thing is like Iron Maiden has gone through many different lineup changes throughout the years. One thing I also kind of want to throw in there to add to your point, Eric. So Clive Burr actually, and some people may not be aware of this, he actually drummed on Number of the Beast. Mm-hmm. So Nico McBrain, who is the drummer now, that he's become like Dickinson, he is Iron Maiden at this point. I mean, everybody knows Iron Maiden's drummer is Nico McBrain, started with Peace of Mind. Yeah. So that's interesting too, because I mean, I admittedly didn't really know anything about the lineup changes other than Paul Di'Anno to Dickinson to Blaze Bayley. The vocalists were all I knew, but Steve Harris, it all basically is Steve Harris's baby.
Yeah, and it's Steve Harris's songs for the most part, especially the early records.
Especially,
I don't think anyone really got any writing credits. I don't even know. Power Slave?
Possibly.
I'm sure there are millions of people that aren't listening because we don't have millions of listeners. I bet there are ones of people that will know that right answers and they'll tell me. So
I'm sure any members of Maiden that are listening could correct us. So, anyway, there's actually, it's interesting you bring that up, the songwriting credit thing, because that actually is going to kind of come into play sort of with one of my picks later.
Cool.
So I'll bring that up.
Awesome. So do you want to do what we're going to do here, just so you guys know, so you're not shocked and surprised? We're both going to pick 3 Maiden records that are our favorites, and we're also going to pick 3 Eddies. Now, I didn't mention Eddie in the history, which is a bit of a
that's
faux pas, because Eddie is also the only constant member of the band.
Yeah. And in fact, it could be argued that Eddie is more Iron Maiden than any of the actual musicians.
Possible. So Eddie essentially is some sort of reanimated human
hybrid of a zombie and I don't know exactly.
Yeah, I think his origin changes with every record, and so that's good. Anyway, he is some sort of animated corpse, and he is on every record cover. Some are better than others, and we'll talk about that. So Do you want to go with your first record pick, Dan?
Sure. All right. So the first one that I am going to pick, and this is a really tough decision because as Eric and I were talking earlier before we started recording, that any one of the first like 8 Iron Maiden, or no, 7, because Seventh Son of a Seventh Son is the 7th. Any one of those could actually be on this list at any given day. But I think overall, number 3, I'm going to go with Killers, Iron Maiden's sophomore album, which is the last album with vocalist Paul Di'Anno. I love this record. I think that from beginning to end, and I also love the first one. I was actually struggling with which Paul Di'Anno record I was going to pick because I love the first one as well. I guess the thing I like about, and I'm going to kind of maybe just sort of talk about the first 2 in conjunction with this Killers pick, because I mean, while they're both different albums, they both do have a very similar aesthetic with Paul Di'Anno's vocals. I just really do like the rawness and almost lo-fi-ness of the first album. And then this album, I feel, is when musically you could see the sort of skeletal beginnings of what Maiden was going to become with something like Number of the Beast, which followed this record. I mean, there's just, in my opinion, there's just no shortage of amazing songs. I feel like, I mean, the intro, the Ides of March instrumental is just the perfect beginning, the perfect intro of this record. And I would almost argue would be one of the best intros of any metal album, not just a Maiden album. And then Wrathchild, which I think is one of Maiden's best songs ever recorded. And I would argue with anybody to the end for that one. I love Wrathchild. And I used to prefer the Dickinson version on like Live After Death, but anymore, I kind of feel like Paul Di'Anno was the perfect guy for these 2 records, and especially this record. I don't feel Dickinson. I mean, there's some people that say if Dickinson, gave Killers a shot, it would be a better record. And I highly disagree with that. Highly. I think that I don't think Dickinson could have done Killers the way that Paul Di'Anno did. But I mean, Murders in the Rue Morgue, you and I both, we've talked about how that's also one of Maiden's best songs of all time. Yeah, I mean,
for sure.
I would put that, maybe I would even put that above Wrathchild. It's definitely in the top 10 for me, and so almost punk rock. I mean, the first 2 Maiden records are almost punk rock, which is funny because I guess Steve Harris, at least he said he absolutely hated punk rock. But I also love the Genghis Khan, the instrumental. It's just absolutely incredible. The song Killers, Purgatory, another really just overlooked Maiden classic. I just think that this record, I mean, I was introduced to Maiden at I was only 6 years old in 86. And I was introduced to, I won't say the name of the record because it's one of my other picks, but in 1986, for those of you who are aware of Maiden's history, you probably know what record came out in 1986, but that was the record that I was introduced to. And, when you're introduced to Maiden later, you kind of think that for whatever reason, your first impression is that the first 2 albums with a different singer isn't going to be worth checking out. And so when I finally did, I was like, this is what I've been missing out on. I think the Paul Di'Anno albums, both are just absolutely fantastic. And I could have put the self-titled one here too. In fact, I would almost say that it's a tie. Absolutely incredible. It's not as operatic or whatever you want to call it as the later stuff, or even as, I guess, progressive as some of the later stuff. Like there's a lot of just raw guitar tone in your face. At times it almost borders on garage rock, sort of. And Paul Di'Anno served as the perfect vocalist because he had the raspy, almost punk rock demeanor. And I think he's the one who kind of brought the punk element more so. A lot of really great playing. Yeah. And also, I think, speaking of Clive Burr earlier, I don't think Clive Burr's drumming can be underestimated either. I think he was just absolutely incredible as well. So yeah, Killers is my third pick. Love that record.
Yeah. So Killers is my second favorite. So I figured we'd have some overlap. So
sure. Yeah.
Killers, I love Killers. And here's the thing.
Amazing.
I was first aware of Iron Maiden early. I mean, like terrifyingly early in my life, because my uncle Steve was a big like headbanger dude. He loved Ozzy and he loved Priest and he loved UFO and Iron Maiden. And so I knew about that stuff basically from the time I was born, it felt like. But by the time I got to age 5 or 6, I already loved heavy metal. Like that is what I listened to. But I remember seeing Eddie, and I remember seeing him when I was little. And in my mind, Eddie is like one of the universal monsters. It's like, well, you got your Dracula, your Wolfman, your Frankenstein, your Mummy, and your Eddie. Like that's it. He's just and Creature from the Black Lagoon, just so no one gets mad at me for forgetting the creature. Anyway, so Eddie's been a part of my life for a long time. And I feel like when I finally actually heard Iron Maiden, it sounded a lot different to me. And I think it had to have been Killers, or at least Number of the Beast, that I heard first. And for me, I think it was Paul Di'Anno that made the difference. And it was the fact that he didn't sound like another metal singer. He wasn't Rob Halford. And even Ozzy, you know, he's not like an opera singer, but he's still hitting big notes, and he's still like this theatrical element of being a heavy metal singer. And Paul Di'Anno wasn't like that at all. So Killers to me, just it's the first time I really remember hearing and seeing Iron Maiden and really just being kind of like beyond intrigued by it, like almost obsessed, which Eddie will do to you as a teenager, as a young person, as a little kid. Seeing Eddie somehow changes your life. I don't know what it is. It's just so easy to obsess over what the hell is going on with this dead guy. Anyway, musically, Killers is outrageously good. Wrathchild is amazing. Murders in the Rue Morgue is probably one of my favorite songs, like maybe ever, because you can't tell me what it is. You could say, well, it's metal, and I don't think so. You could say, well, it's punk rock, and I don't think it's that either. It's just this sort of like speed infused heavy metal with some guts to it, you know, and that's sort of that punk rock coming in. And I just think it's a really cool song. Killers is amazing. Purgatory, which was the single from Killers, is amazing. And I'll say something that probably is pretty unpopular, and sorry to take up so much time. First, let me say that I think Steve Harris sometimes rides the line of using things that he pretends to hate. Okay. Like, I hate punk rock. Punk rock's bullshit. I'm a heavy metal guy. But somehow he ends up with a singer that isn't a heavy metal singer, straight up looks like Darby Crash.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I kind of think that Paul Di'Anno, if he wasn't the singer, Iron Maiden wouldn't have been successful.
No.
Because
I 100% agree.
Everyone who saw them was like, wait, what the hell's going on? They got this punk singer and they're fast as shit and they're super metallic and technical. And you didn't know what you were getting. You didn't know what you were hearing. And because of that ambiguity, it was like, well, the punks can listen to this and the metalheads can listen to this. And not only that, but metalheads now can listen to things that are straight up fast.
Yeah.
And have a melody and not like Jethro Tull medieval melodies. I'm talking about like song melodies, you know, like punk rock, 3-chord kind of things. I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but we'll revisit that idea of Steve Harris using things and pretending to hate them. But
Sure.
I do have to say that without Paul Di'Anno, I don't think they would have really made it past, a much smaller stage than they made it. As far as getting Bruce and moving on and becoming bigger, I think that's a necessity too. But
Sure.
I think without Paul Di'Anno, there isn't an Iron Maiden as we know it. And so, yeah, Killers,
100%.
amazing.
One thing that I think maybe a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of Maiden's first successes were actually with Paul Di'Anno. I mean, Killers was their first world tour.
Yeah.
Killers was their first single, and I believe it charted. I could be wrong, but I think it charted. I mean, so Killers, Maiden had already been a well-oiled machine by the time, Dickinson jumped aboard. Dickinson, I think maybe took them to levels beyond where they were already at. But Paul Di'Anno, Maiden was by no means an unsuccessful act with Paul Di'Anno.
Not at
all. By no means.
My number 3 is Peace of Mind. I love Peace of Mind. It's the classic lineup, but we're kind of moving into a little bit more melodic stuff, but we haven't quite crossed over into theatrical prog yet. I think Number of the Beast is getting there a little bit. We're hearing elements of it. Peace of Mind, we get a lot of those melodies. We're getting a little more actually quite a bit more prog, but the songs kill. I mean, Where Eagles Dare is outrageous. Flight of Icarus, The Trooper, those are all songs that are so good and so right in the sound of Maiden and what they were about to become. Like, I just see it sort of as this bridge personally. Like, Where Eagles Dare it's letting us know, and with the opener of the album, it's letting us know this is where we are and we're going to keep going on this path. Because Number of the Beast was probably a little confusing when it came out to people. They knew Iron Maiden as this thing. Number of the Beast comes out and it's like, okay, this is a heavy metal band, clearly. And, and that's great, but I think it did kind of confuse people. And the music on Number of the Beast sort of feels in the middle. Peace of Mind, I think they're on the path that they're going to follow for the rest of what I consider the good parts of their career.
Yeah.
I think that as far as Eddie goes, which I know shouldn't matter, but it does. I mean, you look at album covers for a long time for some reason when you're young. I don't know why. I don't now. Holy shit. I look at an album cover and I go, yeah, that's cool. Or no, I don't know, whatever. And that's like the last time I look at it. I don't even care. But when I was young, I would just stare. And it was like, we had some sort of continuity going here, and it's like, well, what the hell happened to Eddie? Why did he have to get his head cut open and get a lobotomy? So there's like all kinds of Eddie questions. Sure, yeah. What is Peace of Mind on your list?
Peace of Mind is not on my list. But I do really like the record quite a bit. Two of my favorite Maiden songs are on that, which you mentioned. The opener, Where Eagles Dare, is unbelievable. Just absolutely incredible. And Flight of Icarus is in my top 5 favorite Maiden songs. I mean, just the power of that song is just undeniable. And the video is ridiculous too.
Yeah.
Like they're just like singing in a studio, but then I think it's Nico McBrain is kind of dressed up as this like cloak wearing cult member on the side of a mountain or something, holding a brain. I mean, that's the kind of stuff right there that just brings me back to my childhood. I also was introduced to Maiden very young at 6-7 years old, because I have a sister who's 7 years my senior, and her boyfriend at the time was a huge Maiden fan. And I remember like him and my sister would babysit me and his younger brother because we were the same age. And I remember being at his house and actually getting body slammed by him. Not really. I mean, I was much, but he would pick me up and throw me on like his bed, just as a warning, stay the fuck away from my Maiden tapes, because I actually took his Maiden tapes and I would listen to him because I thought he was a jerk. And, so I was like, well, you're a jerk to me. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and listen to your Maiden tapes. And Somewhere in Time was my first album I heard, and I was 6 years old and I became obsessed with Maiden. In fact, I remember I actually had a jean jacket that had like a whole bunch of heavy metal pens on it. And I was in like third grade. And looking back on it, I'm like, God, they must have been wanting to call like child services on my parents or something. But anyway, so Peace of Mind as a whole, I 100% agree with you on it being a bridge between Number of the Beast and like Power Slave and the progression. I think that without a song like The Trooper, you probably wouldn't have songs like Aces High and 2 Minutes to Midnight. And
for sure.
Stuff like that. And also the songs on Peace of Mind were still kind of trying to work out like, okay, are we going to have 7-minute songs all the time? Or are we going to maybe throw in a couple of sort of radio friendly rock songs? What exactly are we going to do with this now that we got, I think that they were still kind of trying to figure that out. And then with with Power Slave, I feel like they kind of were just like, yeah, we're just going to make some kick-ass stuff. And then they just kind of answered our question with Rime of the Ancient Mariner about song lengths, like at the end of the record.
Yeah,
but
we are a prog band.
We are a prog band, exactly. And so, yeah, Peace of Mind, it's a great record. I would say that me personally, it didn't hit me as much as the other 80s Dickinson records, because part of that is because I came to it late. I had heard all the other records long before I heard Peace of Mind. It didn't hit me like Power Slave or even Number of the Beast. So now we're on to my second pick, which is Power Slave.
Nice.
Power Slave is number 2 for me. For the longest time, it was my favorite Maiden record. And then I kind of had to go back to the other record, which I'll talk about later. But Power Slave, this record, just from the very beginning, it's just fire, man, as they say. It's just Aces High and 2 Minutes to Midnight is, just they work so well together as the first 2 tracks. And then Lost for Words, the instrumental, absolutely incredible. I love the song Flash of the Blade. The song Power Slave, the title track, absolutely incredible. But yes, Rime of the Ancient Mariner, 13 minutes and 45 seconds of just pure brilliance. And it's one of those songs that I don't feel suffers from the length at all. And to me, maybe like when it kind of gets to that, sort of like brooding part where there's the spoken word, which I think happens in every Maiden song that's over 10 minutes long. There's some sort of narration from some, deep voiced guy. And I don't know if that's Dickinson himself. I don't know.
I think so.
I think it is. And he kind of does like different voices and stuff like that. But anyway, the guitar part, the drums, the instrumentation on this album is absolutely excellent. The other thing I really like about it is I feel like it might be the best example of the artwork lending itself to the music perfectly. I feel like everything about the record, the presentation of Power Slave is spot on with what the concept of the record is, which is mostly obviously Egyptian things, the Egyptian Eddie and stuff like that. The pyramids, and it's absolutely incredible. And I would say Aces High is that's definitely also, I have probably about 100 Maiden songs that are in my top 5.
Right. I understand that.
I will say Aces High is top 5, but then I'll also say that 100 other Maiden songs are in my top 5. So
yeah,
they're really, when in actuality, there is no top 5 that exists of Maiden songs for me, because it would change probably every second. But Aces High is one of them that has consistently been there. just absolutely fantastic. Plus also the fact that the tour was just ridiculous. I mean, they had like, I think I read somewhere it was like 13 semi trucks just to carry like one Eddie. Like
they had a pretty big
one
Eddie.
of those mummy Eddies.
Yeah.
They had a huge Eddie. And I remember asking if I could go see the show when I was like, probably, well, no, because I guess I was too young. I think I did get Live After Death, and I think I actually said something to the effect of, "Why didn't you guys take me to see that?" Oh, it's too scary for it's too scary for kids. And I was like, it wouldn't be too scary for me. It'd be awesome for me.
Wiener kids, maybe. Only wiener kids are scared of Eddie. I mean,
yeah, wiener kids. Which I mean, I kind of was a wiener kid, sort of. I mean, I was scared of. I was scared of horror movies and certain music videos when I was younger.
Yeah.
For some reason, Looks That Kill was perfectly acceptable to me, but I was scared to death of that Genesis video with the puppets. Land of Confusion. Yeah, and I was scared to death of Rocket by Herbie Hancock.
Now that is weird.
I was scared to death of that video for the longest time.
The one robot with the long flashlight eyeballs, and it just has like a shiny wig on or something. Oh my God. And then that dummy man, like he's terrifying. Yeah. And then the legs are kicking. And then I think the mannequin guy, he has legs. I don't know, man. It's whack. It's a great video now. I mean, I love watching it now. Yeah.
But back then, and I was also perfectly okay with Eddie. Like I would have Eddie posters.
Right.
I wasn't scared of that, but boy, that Herbie Hancock video.
I mean, it's weird as shit.
That is weird, isn't it? Like, yeah, I was scared of that.
Yeah.
And like horror movies, I didn't really get into appreciating horror movies until I was later in life, which is weird because, you know, Eddie, it's basically a horror movie, like come to life in some ways, you know what I mean?
The artwork for heavy metal is probably most of the reason I was into it when I was a kid.
Same here.
I was a monster kid from like day one. That's all I wanted out of life was just scary monsters all the time.
Well,
and
isn't it still?
Yeah, it is still. Yeah.
Did you know that they made an Iron Maiden comic book recently?
No. Is it about Eddie?
Yeah, Eddie Talks.
Eddie Talks. Is that the name of it? In it.
That would be amazing if that's what it was.
Eddie Talks.
Iron Maiden, Eddie Talks.
The history of the band according to the mascot.
Yeah. Like I think
they made me cut my hair.
They put a bunch of chains around me, and they put like this cyborg suit on me at one time.
They were like, we can find another corpse, man. Get it together.
How uncomfortable it is to breathe fire. That would be great.
Oh man. Well, I would watch and read and listen to anything where Eddie told me the history of the band.
I guess he like goes on adventures.
Oh shit. Wow.
I think maybe he has a sword too, if I remember right.
Like the Made in Japan.
Yeah, like the Made in Japan thing. Yeah. But he doesn't. I don't remember. I'm gonna have to look it up. It's called Legacy of the Beast. That's the name of the book. They really could make a fortune, you know, because Maiden hasn't made a fortune yet.
No.
They really could. They really could make a fortune if they made a movie based on the Eddie character, I think.
As long as they didn't use that crappy CGI that they've been using for 15 years.
That's true. That's true.
I feel like every time I see Eddie, I'm like, oh, come on, man. Like,
yeah, the new album covers are surprisingly low tier and disappointing.
Oh my God. Like, yeah, we'll have to get into that. But
I do think there's one that was done really well.
Dance of Death.
yeah, that's such an amazing fucking cover, man. That actually might be my favorite Eddie.
Oh no. What? You fibber. You tricked me.
Well, you're the one that said Dance of Death was really good.
Yeah, I was trying to trick you. So what are the record covers you like after Eric Riggs' last one?
We're gonna say after Fear of the Dark, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Because even though Fear of the Dark and No Prayer for the Dying were not good albums necessarily, there was good stuff on them.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Overall, I wouldn't say they were good albums.
Mhm.
They were still good covers.
Yeah,
I think.
But
But
I think they're pretty good.
Like the covers to the Blaze Bayley albums were both horrendous.
Yeah. Yeah. They're just lame.
Yeah. Brave New World was okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that one was okay, but Dance of Death was absolutely brilliant. And A Matter of Life and Death, I didn't think, but I actually think The Final Frontier has a really cool album cover.
I mean, it's pretty cool. It's a new take on Eddie, which is nice. You know,
I don't like the you got them right here in your background, the Book of Souls Eddie. There's something about that one I don't like. I don't know what it is.
It bothers me that it seems like cultural appropriation somehow. Like, I don't know. Like
I could kind of see that.
It's like
kind of surprised they haven't. I'm kind of surprised that hasn't been brought up against them.
Well, I just don't even understand exactly what they're going for, but it seems to be sort of like it reminds me of like the Poison native tongue record, like just going for this like it's like African for some reason, somehow, some sort of just it's African, you know, without actually knowing anything about it. It just, I don't know if that makes any sense. It's like,
no, it makes sense.
I don't know. When you look at it, it's like, ugh. All right. Well, I guess it's my last one. So my favorite Iron Maiden record is Number of the Beast.
Oh, snap. Amazing record.
Love it.
Amazing love record.
It. It's like I said, where I feel like Peace of Mind was sort of a bridge to, you know, that more proggy opera, theatrical, everything that Maiden became. I think Peace of Mind is definitely, in my opinion, the bridge. But Number of the Beast is sort of like, it feels like it's coming out of Killers and just being built upon. It's still fast and it's still metallic and it's unashamedly pushing people's buttons on purpose, which I don't think Maiden did again. I don't think they minded the controversy of the album cover and the name of the album, and the single Number of the Beast caused a lot of problems. And
they had the video.
Oh right, yeah, the terrible video.
Yeah, it was a bad video, but it definitely lent itself to the whole satanic panic thing.
Oh yeah. So I don't think they ever went down that path again. I think they enjoyed the controversy and it sold a lot of records for them, but I don't think that was ever their point with it. You know what I mean? I don't think Maiden ever really, subject matter wise, pushed the limits on purpose to get people wound up. They just didn't seem like that kind of band to me. But yeah, Invaders is just a hell of an opener. It's like
so good.
It's, you still are confused. You're still like, well, they have a new singer and the artwork is like, there's that guy again, but now he's like a puppet master and he's controlling the devil in hell and all these little people are burning. And so Eddie is apparently really big, or at least cosmic, or something. Something is beyond just some sort of street level punk skeleton man. You know, he now has become I don't know, something bigger, something stranger, something more. He's magic now. Eddie's magic. So and Children of the Damned is amazing. 22 Acacia Avenue is amazing. Number of the Beast is freaking untouchable. And one thing we haven't talked about yet is Steve Harris and his bass playing.
Yeah.
His bass playing is, I mean, he may not be my favorite rock and roll or rock bass player. But he's the best.
Yeah.
He's the best one. Like, I think John Entwistle's my favorite because he just has a real natural way of playing and doesn't play like anyone else. and is never playing the melody. So he's my favorite. And then Geezer Butler is my second favorite because he just stays in the pocket and he grooves and he plays hard. He just goes places you don't expect. But Steve Harris is the best bass player.
Yeah.
And he does these galloping triplets all the time. He actually uses 3 fingers. People are going to write in. They're not really, because no one ever writes in. But if they were, they would say he uses 4. But actually, the movement of his 4th finger is just sort of sympathetic from his ring finger galloping. He also does an anchor with his hand or wrist on the bass, which is interesting to me. He uses his forearm on the body of the bass, and his hand is moving completely freely. And so he has 2 different styles. It's that galloping style, and then he'll do a finger style for sort of arpeggios and softer things. Anyway, sorry to go off about that, but he's in full force on this record. It's outrageous. And Number of the Beast especially is the one where I just can't even understand what's happening, except for Run to the Hills. The break in Run to the Hills is sick. Like, it is outrageous. They're just doing that thing, and Bruce is in his big, that kind of thing. And the whole time, though, Steve Harris just until it gets to the end, and it's just like, and you're like, how the fuck did he do that? And it's killer. And everyone's just playing full hard. I just think it's an amazing record. And it's always my go-to. It's always the one I put on. Yes. The other ones are always kind of like, well, I guess if I'm not going to listen to Number of the Beast, I'll listen to this other one. So it absolutely had to be my favorite. So anyway, what do you think of Number of the Beast?
Yeah. Oh God. I love Number of the Beast. And let me be perfectly clear here. Just because Number of the Beast didn't affect me in the same way that some of the other Maiden albums did, doesn't mean that I don't think it's an amazing album, because I do. I think that Number of the Beast it probably is like my 4th or 5th personal favorite, at least. I mean, it's in my top 5. Invaders is great. I love Children of the Damned. There's a part of it that is also very much like, when you're listening to an album like Number of the Beast, it is like you're listening to a horror movie, kind of, you know what I mean? Like, you almost can picture scenes like 22 Acacia Avenue, and sort of like the, Number of the Beast. And like, it almost does feel like a movie plot line. However, I am kind of shocked by one thing, Eric, that you didn't mention: the brilliance of Hallowed Be Thy Name.
Oh yeah.
That is, like, in my opinion, that could be one of my, it could be number 1 for me. I don't really know. Nice. I love Hallowed Be Thy Name.
Yeah, I do too.
That is amazing. The lyrics, the concept, of basically just like a guy waiting to be hung. Yeah. And I mean, it's just, there's the emotion that Dickinson conveys in his voice, but then also just like you mentioned, Steve Harris's playing is just completely unmatched. And I think a lot of the rhythms on that album can be attributed to Clive Burr once again. Clive Burr, I think, was a very, and oftentimes overlooked. And I mean, it's pretty justified when you consider Nico McBrain is definitely sick drummer. And he's the one who really kind of took the seat over from Peace of Mind. It's justified. It's not right, but I can see I did it for many years too, like not really appreciating Clive Burr's drumming. But I think, like, again, I think it's the same thing with Number of the Beast that Killers is with Dickinson, that I'm not sure if Nico McBrain's drumming would be the same on a record like Number of the Beast. I think Clive Burr really contributed a lot to that record musically. There's so many good. The Prisoner too. That's another one. And what I love about The Prisoner is it's based on that sick British TV show. The quote from the beginning is actually from that show. I am not a number. It's fantastic. But yeah, Number of the Beast.
Yeah.
I could see why it would be somebody's favorite Maiden record. All right, so my number one is probably going to shock a lot of people. Yes. It's the X Factor, the Blaze Bayley. No, just kidding.
Oh my God.
you were.
I was like, shit, I gotta
gonna be like,
talk
what?
about that.
Are you kidding me? No, actually, I kind of gave it away earlier. And for me personally, my favorite is Somewhere in Time. And there's a reason, there's a lot of reasons for it, but number one, it's the first Maiden record, as I mentioned, that I'd ever heard. So it was my introduction to Maiden. But also, I just really like the themes on it. I really think the playing on it is absolutely incredible. I also like the fact, and this is kind of something earlier when we kind of talked about songwriting credits within the Maiden camp. This is kind of an interesting little piece about this record. This was sort of the beginning of the end, I think, of Dickinson eventually exiting the band because he came to the studio with a bunch of song ideas that were basically like acoustic based,
right?
That he kind of wanted to make almost like a physical graffiti sort of sounding record. And it was immediately rejected by Steve Harris. And then the other thing that I find very interesting, and this plays into what you were talking about, Steve Harris utilizing things that he hates, synthesizer.
Right.
Steve Harris went on record several times before this record saying, actually basically dissing and throwing shade at like the new wave movements and calling synthesizers fake instruments and saying, you'll never hear a synthesizer in a Maiden record. This was actually during the Power Slave tour.
Right.
And then look what happened. Somewhere in Time, the next record. It's interesting. A lot of what's being utilized here is more like guitar synth effects than actual synthesizers, but there is some synthesizers going on. But I think the song structures on this record are unbelievable. Caught Somewhere in Time, my favorite opener on a Maiden record. It's so exciting. The galloping element is just at full force there. Wasted Years, I think, is just a brilliant song. Stranger in a Strange Land is awesome. I think that Alexander the Great is awesome. Sea of Madness, the loneliness of the long distance runner. And the other thing that I really enjoy about it is the artwork.
Yeah.
I love the fact that it's based on Blade Runner, which is one of the best sci-fi movies ever made. Somewhere in Time is the record for me, man. It's the one that got me into Maiden, and it's probably a strange one for some people because it really is where you could tell there was sort of some differences as far as the opinions of the artistic direction of where this band was going to go. Yeah, man. Somewhere in Time, that's my personal favorite one.
Yeah, I love Somewhere in Time. I think for me, although I had heard Iron Maiden when I was younger, I think that Somewhere in Time I was finally of an age where I saw the video, Wasted Years. I could go buy it, or at least, ask for it or whatever.
Yeah.
Save my money. And so it was kind of the first one for me too, that I actually spent a lot of time listening to. Because the other ones weren't available to me.
Sure.
Except if my uncle let me listen to them or something like that. This was the first one. I bought it on cassette, I remember. And I really like it. And it's funny because like Wasted Years, it's an Adrian Smith song. And I feel like throughout the course of the rest of their career, I think they tried to recapture Wasted Years.
Yeah.
On almost every song. They were like, that worked. We better keep doing that.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I think that there was I think Somewhere in Time was the one record where they kind of were just like, oh, wow, we can actually do other stuff. You know what I mean? Kind of. Yeah. They're like, we can actually do other stuff, but still be Maiden.
Still being Maiden. But I think that when it goes into that chorus of Wasted Years, I think everyone was pretty surprised. It's like, whoa, when are you going to make this dark? and it never did get there. It only got, and they had epic choruses before that. I mean, all kinds of them, but they never were like in this sort of major key, epic, happy sounding thing, you know? And so that made a big difference.
And the song was almost like, it was definitely, I would say at that point, it was their poppiest song that they
for sure. Yeah.
But that was even overshadowed by Can I Play with Madness?
Oh yeah. I mean, if we want to talk about Seventh Son, I think we can. I think if we wanted to put an honorable mention in, Seventh Son.
Seventh Son is amazing.
So
Can I Play with Madness?
The guitar synths, real quick though, sorry. The guitar synths on Somewhere in Time is exactly what I was talking about. How Harris would pretend to hate something and then reap the benefits of it anyway.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
And it's like, well, it's a guitar. You can't just get away with it because it's just a guitar and not really a synthesizer. It's like you're just changing the controller. Like if it had a keyboard, then it's bad, but if it has strings, then it's good. But you know, that's fine. Have your cake and eat it too. I mean,
yeah,
if you can figure out a way to do that, whatever.
You know what I would love to hear is I would love to hear an Iron Maiden auto-tune song. Like I would love to hear Dickinson use auto-tune.
He's probably one of the few singers out there that really probably would never need to use it. He's an amazing singer. He really is.
It
gets really lame sometimes. And that's just the way it is. That's the nature of being theatrical. Yeah. Because you're taking these huge swings and trying things out. And it's always with complete commitment. And of course you're going to miss sometimes. And the fact that you went for it so hard and missed, then it becomes somewhat laughable. But that's okay. Like I'd rather have people try and fail than just be boring. So who cares? You know? Yeah, exactly. Anyway.
honorable mentions. I'm going to say that I definitely have to put the self-titled album on there. That is for sure. Phantom of the Opera, Prowler, and the song Iron Maiden has one of the sickest guitar lines ever. Oh yeah, for sure. So memorable. And then I'm gonna have to say, for me, because it wasn't on my list, I'm gonna have to say, definitely Seventh Son. Like, let's talk about Seventh Son a little bit.
I'd love to.
Can I Play with Madness was the perfect marriage. I feel like with Wasted Years, they were building up to something that was eventually Can I Play with Madness? Yeah. Because I believe it was actually their highest, to this day, I think it's their highest charting single.
Well, and it doesn't seem by accident. Like, no. Literally, if you ask someone how long a radio song is, they say 3.5 minutes. Yeah. Can I Play with Madness is exactly
3.5 minutes.
It's like, you know, they did it on, I don't want to say they did it on purpose, like in a sellout way. But I think they were writing it and probably were like, you know, this could be played somewhere. Let's make it happen.
But let's also not forget that they also had Run to the Hills. Yeah. You know, they kind of were not strangers to that, if you really think about it. Even Flight of Icarus. You could even make a case for 2 Minutes to Midnight. Sure. Yeah. So but I feel like with Can I Play with Madness, I feel like definitely like where they were just like, okay, I don't feel like with Run to the Hills, they wrote it to be a pop song necessarily, even though that's what it came out to be. I think with Can I Play with Madness, it was like, yeah, let's make a pop song. Let's just, you know. Yeah,
but it's really good too.
It's so good. I think. And the video, if you want to talk about ridiculous Iron Maiden videos. So there's this guy who's a teacher.
Graham Chapman, by the way.
Oh, is it Graham Chapman? Okay.
From Monty Python.
Yeah. From Monty Python. I did not realize that. And so, okay, so the guy from Monty Python going around scolding these, I don't know if they were supposed to be college students drawing things in black robes. Yeah. And I don't know what they were. And I remember there was he was ripping pages out of them. Yeah. He comes to this one kid who's drawing a metal magazine of Eddie in the sky, and he's just horrified by what he sees, and he takes it. And then he falls down this hole. This big dirt hole. He wakes up. There's these guys, I guess they're Satanists, who are walking through this cave with torches and black robes on, black cloaks. And he follows them, and of course they disappear. But then he finds himself in this room full of spider webs with a fridge, like a refrigerator in there for some reason.
Yeah.
He opens up the refrigerator, and it's an animated version of the Seventh Son cover of Eddie actually pulling the fetus out.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool. But then he freezes, and then he's like, I don't know. It's not like he's dead. So I don't know what's going on, but it was the epitome of like an 1988 Headbangers Ball metal video.
So in the video that we don't really know what's happening makes sense. Like we can't figure out what Eddie's doing anymore. We don't know where he is. He's in some strange ice world or something, and he has torn his heart out. And I think in the video his animated heart turns into like a little creature or something.
Well, isn't it a fetus?
Yeah, right. That's it. Yeah, like you said, a fetus. And then like he still has the cyborg stuff from somewhere in time, but now he's missing the bottom half of his body. Like, and then the singles are just insane looking. So
yeah.
But I'm trying to hold back a little bit because I do want to talk about the artwork. We haven't talked about our favorite Eddies yet.
Yeah.
So,
we have not.
So do you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
I'll go first. So,
all right.
So my number 3 is going to be the Seventh Son cover.
Yeah.
I love that cover. I think that it's beautiful and gorgeous. Mm-hmm. I love the color scheme of it. I love the icy feel that it gives me. Definitely, I feel like for it being a prog album, I think it was kind of the perfect cover to exemplify that.
Oh, for sure. And it causes a lot of mystery and stuff again, which with this record, I think is, kind of how it is. But
absolutely.
In the background on the gatefold, it's very strange, whatever's happening. There's Eddie's head is on fire, but then it also, if you look at the full painting, the smoke from his head goes up and becomes an Eddie in the sky. And then there's these floating light things. And then there's some Eddies that look like maybe they're just like encased in ice and melting. But then the number of the Beast Eddies in the background.
Yes.
There's like a Bible. And it looks like maybe this whole thing is hovering above the earth or something. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
It's really out there.
Yeah, it's all crazy.
And it's cool though,
really
because
is.
it reflects the record so well,
And I've also got to make a real quick, a sort of a mention of, have you seen the Can I Play with Madness single?
Oh yeah, I love it so much. It's like a corkscrew.
Where he's got he's got a corkscrew and he's got like a fist going through his head, which even adds even more.
I think I drew that probably 100 times when I was in middle school. That image,
right?
And the cover as well. I just drew it nonstop. I was obsessed almost. But yeah,
absolutely
great Eddies,
dude. That is so good.
Yeah.
All right. So do you want to trade off, or do you want me to?
My number 3 is actually a single from Seventh Son, so it follows that same sort of thing, and it is the Clairvoyant single, which is real weird. It looks like Alex Gray almost, the guy that Tool used a lot of his artwork. It's like an Eddie, and it's like one facing you, and it has 3 faces, and it's held together by like machinery, and then like these crazy, honestly, Alex Gray eyeballs are floating out of the fire in the top. It's just weird. And that's how this whole the whole record felt to me. Was just like, we're experimenting here, and not just all the synthesizer, but the artwork, the song structure, everything about it. It's like, we don't know who we are anymore, and we're gonna try a bunch of shit, and it's gonna get weird. Yeah. And that, so I think that single cover it just lends to that. So
absolutely.
What's your number 2, Eddie?
So my number 2 is actually, I don't even know if this is, it says Prophecy LP cover, but I just remember this, it used to be on shirts all the time. So I don't know if maybe it's like some sort of bootleg cover, but
Okay.
it's like a Prophet Eddie. His hair kind of looks like the scientist from Back to the Future, and he's sitting
Oh
in
yeah,
front of this
over
like
the crystal
orb.
ball.
Yeah,
Yeah.
over the crystal ball with these
Yeah.
two candles lit from side to
Yeah.
side.
That's a great Eddie.
I loved that Eddie, and that's always been one of my favorites.
Yeah, I like that Eddie. I think that if I'm not mistaken, it almost seems like he's wearing the duster from the Stranger in a Strange Land
Yes,
single,
yes,
which is weird. And he
that
also
is
looks
weird.
kind of just like a haggard old man for some
Yeah.
weird reason.
I was gonna say I know for a fact that this picture was somewhere between Somewhere in Time and Seventh
Right.
Son.
So it might have been like
if
a
not one
tour
or the other.
design too. They had a lot of tour
Yeah,
designs just for shirts and stuff too, which is crazy.
that makes sense because I bet the Seventh Son tour was called the Prophecy Tour.
Might
I
be.
bet.
Yeah. It would make sense.
So that's
Nice.
probably it. Yeah.
My second Eddie, even though we haven't talked about it because I think we just sort of didn't include live records because, you know, they have a ton of them, it seems. Life After Death is actually super good. And
So
probably
so good.
would be one of my favorite records, but I just didn't know the rules, as it were. You know what I mean?
Right.
But that Eddie is amazing. I mean, he's just coming out of the ground. Everything's on fire. He's either shooting light out of his head into the sky, or there's light shooting into his head from out of the sky. I don't even know, but somehow it's making him come back from the dead. I just love the colors of it. I think it's a beautiful painting, which is, I mean, I always loved Derek Riggs' stuff, but some of the stuff can seem kind of flat. Like the Somewhere in Time cover is amazing, but you look at it, it's just like kind of flat. You know, I don't know if it's the colors or something, but it just doesn't really pop the same. But yeah, the Life After Death, just the colors of it is just, they're gorgeous. It's an amazing
They are.
And I just like Eddie. He just seems completely out of control. Like a demonic force or some kind of unstoppable force, which up to this point, I don't know, he was sort of like a person or something, you know? And then all of a sudden it's like, no, this thing is bigger than just a dead person. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Definitely.
Anyway, I love the Live After Death Eddie.
Yeah, that's kind of the first. You're right. That's kind of the first one where he didn't appear. He didn't appear human, like in a weird sort of way. Even though he was never human, really. But like, I don't know. The first two albums.
Yeah,
he's just like a person that just happens to have weird skin.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. Would you be mad if my number one was a tie?
No, it's all good.
So I'm going to pick two that are tied for number one.
Okay.
First one is the cover of Made in Japan. Made in Japan with the sword.
Yeah.
Love that cover.
It's good.
A lot of that has to do with my obsession with ninjas at that age and like Ninja Turtles and things like that. And I love the fact that Derek Riggs was putting Eddie in that sort of subculture. Obviously fit with the theme of them being over in Japan, you know?
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really cool. And then the other one was one that we already mentioned, which is the Stranger in a Strange Land.
Yeah, it's cool.
Cover. Love that. If we're talking about albums, just as real quick honorable mentions, I would have to say that the first two albums are two of my favorite album covers, Killers and Self-Titled. Love those. I like Killers because he's just like killing somebody, and it exemplifies like evil, but it's like true evil. You know, it's like real evil. So it's actually like, I kind of feel Killers is actually an even scarier album cover than say like Number of the Beast or, you know, even like Peace of Mind. Although Peace of Mind, I wouldn't want to be anywhere near that Eddie either.
Right. Well, the cool thing too is that in Killers, the cover Sanctuary single shows Eddie killing Margaret Thatcher.
Right.
And so on the cover of Killers, that the hands and the blousey shirt, I'm assuming is also Margaret Thatcher. That's reaching up and pulling his shirt. That's pretty cool to have that sort of continuity. And then women in uniform, she's waiting with a machine gun to kill Eddie while he walks down the street with two young ladies, which is so stupid. Like, why is Eddie out on the town? Like,
yeah, that's true. I never thought of that. For real though, like, I mean, I guess if I was Eddie, I'd be like, what is anyone going to do to me?
Yeah. I mean, they can't kill him, apparently.
Apparently
He'll
not.
just get lightning into his forehead and shoot out of a flaming grave. So whatever.
Or half of his body will disappear and he'll pull out a fetus.
Right.
Like one of the two. You know? But yeah, the lightning shooting out of his forehead, life after death, beautiful.
The Purgatory one is my number one favorite. It predates Number of the Beast, but it uses the same devil, like with a wing on its head. Yeah, I think I talked about it previously that my friend had this. He was a hoodlum like me. We were hoodlums. And he had this poster in his room, and I would just like lay there and stare at it. And it just scared me to death. But, and I just think it's really cool. I had not seen anything so blatantly scary yet in heavy metal. But as far as honorable mentions go, honestly, anything off Number of the Beast is sick. Run to the Hills is
an amazing album cover.
Outrageously cool.
Yeah.
Like just Eddie and the devil fighting on like a rock, and there's just demons all around him.
Yeah, yeah.
And then apparently Eddie wins because in the Number of the Beast single, he's like holding the devil's head and it's bleeding all over.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and then Flight of Icarus, he's like flying in the sun with like a jetpack, and I don't know, man. They were just going nuts.
Oh, two other honorable mentions are the Aces High and 2 Minutes to Midnight singles, where
they're nice.
Eddie's like a pilot.
Yeah,
like Aces High, he's a pilot, and then he's like a soldier on 2 Minutes to Midnight, where he's like pointing to you with a cigar, like he's actually smoking, I guess.
Yeah, well, we would be remiss if we didn't mention the Trooper also.
Oh yeah, the Trooper.
I mean, the Trooper might honestly be one of the most iconic Eddies.
That's a really good one.
You know,
and I do think that the Final Frontier was a cool album cover, but I wouldn't put it in my favorites by any means. And I actually think that Brave New World had kind of a cool cover. It was kind of basic, but it was kind of cool. And then, you know, it's unfortunate that Iron Maiden, who basically became synonymous with good album covers, just like even had the opportunity to make like horrible album covers in the 90s. Yeah. Like, it makes me sad.
So as far as worst album covers, I think Dance of Death. But the Virus single cover sucks.
Oh God.
Like it's not even
terrible.
Eddie. It's like so stupid. I just hate it so much.
Well, even the Virtual 10 and X Factor album covers, like they're barely Eddie.
Yeah, right.
You know, and even the Final Frontier, that's not really Eddie either. You know, like it's not the Eddie that we knew. You know,
right.
And I will say that the Book of Souls stayed pretty true to the form of Eddie, and I will also say that so did Matter of Life and Death. I don't know. It's unremarkable to me.
Yeah.
Whereas like all of the 80s stuff was, and this is going to make me sound such like an old man when it comes to Maiden. They are one of the cases where it's like the earlier, the better. You know, hey, Maiden is still one of my favorite bands of all time when it comes to, you know, just their influence and I would say that Maiden probably is like what you were saying. It was my introduction to heavy metal.
I have a question for you. Do you remember liking Iron Maiden was not cool at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then a couple things happened and all of a sudden it was like kind of okay again. So the things that I noticed that happened were the song Blaze Bailey Finnegan the Third on the Slow Riot for New Canada.
For New Canada, yeah.
So that song, everyone was like, well, you know, those are Iron Maiden lyrics, right? You know, or whatever. And it got sort of the conversation about Iron Maiden started with people that weren't supposed to talk about Iron Maiden.
Right.
And then also the Teenage Dirtbag song came out with like a year later or whatever and mentioned Iron Maiden.
Yep.
And then, for some reason it was like all of a sudden in like, I don't even remember, 2000.
I'm going to say 2000.
Yeah, that was the Teenage Dirtbag. But for some reason, all the metal people around here started to talk about Iron Maiden, how cool they were. People had Maiden shirts on and patches and shit. I was like, when the hell did this happen?
I know. Yeah, it was a very bizarre thing actually for me. So when I became a teenager, I started to hate metal. Like I stopped listening to Anthrax. I stopped listening to Metallica. I stopped listening to Maiden, especially Maiden, because I thought Maiden was just pure cheese in the 90s. And to be fair, with the albums they were releasing, I mean, why wouldn't I think that?
Right.
But I even thought that the older stuff was just old shit and just needed to die, just like hair metal. And in fact, I even, unfortunately, kind of lumped them in with hair metal for some reason. And, you know, because it was all part of kind of the same marketing tool, you know, of the 80s. And I was a punk rocker, and I mean, I have to thank Kurt Cobain for that, you know, and, you know, and I'm glad that I was a punk rocker in the 90s and didn't just keep listening to 80s hair metal. And then something happened in the year 2099, first of all. Like you said, Slow Riot for New Canada. For the longest time, I had no idea those were Maiden lyrics. I had no idea whatsoever. Yeah, the Teenage Dirtbag song, which I always thought of that as just like they're making fun of Maiden. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what I always thought of. But then I bet there was an element of sincerity to it now.
Oh, yeah.
Looking back on it, because even like Weezer were like Maiden fans, you know what I mean? Like it became apparent that like Smashing Pumpkins and Pearl Jam and all these bands were actually influenced by the likes of Maiden and Priest. And so then I think what happened is, well, first of all, I kind of think in a weird sort of way, we could almost look at the genesis of that sort of metal being accepted to like new metal. And part of that is because new metal brought the conversation of metal being in the mainstream back again.
That's true. Yeah.
After like 91 through like, I don't know, we'll say like 95. When the first Korn album dropped in 94, I think. And then you had Deftones follow very quickly. And then you had Limp Bizkit. And even though it was, you know, some of that stuff was rap metal and it wasn't the metal that we all knew from Anthrax or Metallica or Maiden or anything like that. Metal became the most popular music on mainstream radio after like, or at least the most popular form of rock music on mainstream radio after like 97 or something like that. I mean, you couldn't even turn on MTV without seeing a Korn video at that time, you know?
Right.
And so I think that became a thing. And then eventually people like myself who, you know, when I was 15 or 16 living in a place like Muscatine, my resources were kind of limited to what I was going to be exposed to in terms of underground. I started hearing things like Converge and Dillinger Escape Plan. And, you know, they kind of started popping up in Cave-In or whatever it is, you know? And a lot of those bands were influenced by Maiden. Even in the 90s, they didn't really, that's one interesting thing about some of those like metalcore bands is that I feel like they kind of never really let go of metal in the first place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And so Then you started having bands that kind of sounded like Maiden, like 3 Inches of Blood is the one that comes to mind. That kind of sounded, or even like something like Shadows Fall, or even early Lamb of God or something, where it was obvious that they were taking that Adrian Smith sort of like twin lead sort of sound and putting it to something heavier than Maiden. And then, like you said, the pop culture references, on top of the fact that we had Bruce Dickinson back in the band in 2000, they put out their reunion album, and The Wicker Man got like the most airplay of any Maiden song since Can I Play with Madness?
Yeah.
And then I think it just kind of snowballed from there, because then you started having the underground metal world start giving Maiden their props. And at the time, I would say this generation, it was overdue, because I think whether people wanted to admit it or not, Maiden had a huge influence on punk rock, on metal, both underground and mainstream, on thrash, black metal.
Oh yeah.
I mean, black metal bands, they worship Iron Maiden. I think all these things together, though, brought Maiden back into popular culture, to where even underground bands, all those Vulcan Screamo bands, they loved Maiden. You would talk to them and they'd be like, oh, I love Maiden. Somehow Maiden were able to become very culturally cool. And now they're like, they've really sort of like, they did a 180 like from their 90s days. Cause in the 90s, they were just, I mean, it was like painfully uncool to like Iron Maiden in the 90s.
For sure.
Like it was like time. if you wore a Maiden, if I wore a Maiden like shirt to school in like 1996, I probably would have like beat myself up.
Yeah, you would have been a teenage dirtbag.
I would have been a teenage dirtbag, exactly. No, actually, I don't encourage violence, especially against oneself, for wearing a Maiden t-shirt in 1996. But
well, what do you think we wrap this up? We gotta. I think
I think that might be
covered
a good thing.
Everything. This is the most exhaustive, in-depth dive into Iron Maiden.
So let's find out.
Two people who don't know that much about Iron Maiden.
let's do a recap. What did we learn today? We learned that Iron Maiden are British.
That's true.
We learned that Steve Harris was a guy who liked to do things that he hated. We learned that Eddie is a thing.
Eddie is a thing. Yes.
And that Eddie likes to kill people.
Yeah, he's a killer.
And he likes to pull his heart out.
Yeah.
In
and it's
like icy weather. And it's a fetus. And
it happens.
All these things. There's a lot of really good things to ponder there.
And honestly, those are the bullet points. Those are the important things to know about Iron Maiden. I think we really nailed that. So
we really did. There was the
rest of it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, no, all that stuff about like music. Don't even,
just put a giant Eddie poster on your wall and just, kiss your life goodbye. That's it. That's all you need in this life. Big Eddie poster.
Preferably make it a poster of him killing someone or something.
Or get that old, you remember the back of your door posters that were popular?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I had an Eddie one where he was like busting through the door.
Oh shit.
Yeah. It was really
I never knew those existed.
So I think that's gotta be one of my favorite Eddies too. Anyway.
Yeah. A lot of Eddies.
I love most of the Eddies. I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah, exactly. The Eddies are great. If you guys want to visit our Insta or our Facebook, we're there.
Yeah.
All you have to do is just go there and look up Accelerativ Thrust.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. And if you don't like Iron Maiden, I'm sorry. We're going to have another episode next week where we will be returning to, this will be like 3 weeks since we've actually reviewed
I know, right? I'm all backed up.
Yeah.
I got so many records I want to talk about.
We need to get some records out of our system because they're really clogging us up. Yeah. So anyway, thank you for listening, everybody, and stay safe and up the irons.
Yep. All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye.